Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a great week. Thursday. Happy Halloween. Yeah, all that good stuff. A lot going on in the world of the Colts football. Pacers win last night. Just so many things to talk about. Yankees fans are distraught, which means that I'm going to have a great day just because I know that Yankee fans are distraught. Obviously, the biggest news going on here in Indianapolis is still, I wouldn't say he's not our guy anymore. Anthony Richardson being benched for the 39-year-old veteran Joe Flacco. And yesterday being Wednesday, we got to listen to the various Colts players kind of react to the news. And the more that I listened, the more and more it becomes apparent that Anthony Richardson, it doesn't seem like he lost the locker room. It doesn't really seem like this was Shane Steichen's decision, right? Like this was clearly decided by Jim Irsay, as we theorized from the beginning. Here is Colts defensive captain Zaire Franklin on how he found out about the young quarterback Anthony Richardson being benched for Joe Flacco.
I mean, I found out pretty much the same time as everybody else. Now I had a chance to, obviously talk with Shane. Me and Shane usually catch up on Tuesdays just about, where the team is and where we're going. But yeah, I pretty much found out the same way everybody else did.
Like social media?
Yeah, I guess. But, I don't really play offense. So.
Yeah, Zaire Franklin right there talking about, how he found out about Anthony Richardson being benched. And look, at the end, he tries to, I wouldn't say backtrack, but he tries to justify not finding out earlier by saying he doesn't play offense and all these things. The thing with Zaire Franklin is he's one of the captains. The C on the chest, it might not mean much. I think it means something because the team picks who the captains are. The only guy who, it doesn't really matter how the team votes is, the starting quarterback's always going to be a captain. So Zaire Franklin is clearly a leader on the team. And if Shane Steichen was making this decision based off of whether or not Anthony Richardson lost the locker room, I feel like it would make a lot of sense for him to talk to the leaders in the locker room. I just think that this further points to the idea that Jim Irsay was the one behind the benching of Anthony Richardson as opposed to Shane Steichen. Like Zaire Franklin saying that he found out on social media just doesn't point to the idea of Shane Steichen fully making this decision, like he said in his press conference when he announced that Joe Flacco was going to be the starter going forward. Michael Pittman Jr. was asked about his reaction to Anthony Richardson being benched, and here's what he had to say.
Obviously, it was kind of shocking. I mean, it caught me off guard. And that's the good and bad thing about football is there's like opportunity and for everybody. And I don't think that this is over. I think that he's going to come back better from this.
Michael Pittman Jr., Colts receiver right there talking about Anthony Richardson being benched. And look, this further feeds, based off of his response, into the idea that Jim Irsay, not Shane Steichen, was the one who made this choice of benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco. Michael Pittman Jr. is a guy that Shane Steichen undoubtedly respects. We have heard Shane Steichen stand at the podium and rave about Michael Pittman Jr.'s toughness. Okay, like we all remember the week that we thought he was going to go on IR, and then he played, right? And that press conference after the game was just Shane Steichen being like, yeah, Michael Pittman Jr.'s one of the toughest guys that I know, and that toughness earns you respect in the locker room. And look, if Anthony Richardson was being benched because he lost the locker room, then I feel like it would make sense for Shane Steichen to talk to Michael Pittman Jr. about it, right? And then at the end of the clip, Michael Pittman Jr. answers a question that he wasn't even asked. And this was my biggest takeaway from listening to Michael Pittman Jr. talk here. He goes out of his way to make the point that he thinks we'll see Anthony Richardson start again in Indianapolis at some point. Look, with the exception of Anthony Richardson, we know that almost every player in the NFL, when they talk to the media, they just say what they're supposed to. And so whenever I listen to guys talk and make statements, I want to find the part of the answer that doesn't answer the question, something that's a little extra. And Michael Pittman Jr. going out of his way to make the point that he thinks Anthony Richardson is going to start again at some point in Indianapolis was revealing to me. It further supports this idea that Anthony Richardson didn't lose the locker room and that this was a Jim Irsay decision. And look, anytime an owner gets overly involved, just think Jerry Jones, obviously the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, he's highly involved. Woody Johnson, right? He's up there with the Jets. He's panicking, just doing whatever Aaron Rodgers wants him to do. And they're 2-6, probably going to be 2-7 after tonight. When owners get involved, nothing good happens. Things just don't go well. So I think Jim Irsay getting involved isn't a good sign. Okay, Jim Irsay's been around a long time, right? His dad owned the Colts and he's been the owner for a long time. But my question is like what's the point in hiring a coach if you aren't going to let him coach? Like Jim Irsay compared Shane Steichen to Don Shula, the winningest coach in the history of the NFL, right? That was what, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago? And then, not very much time later, because 2.5 months in the grand scheme of things is not very long. He was like, you know what, Shane, you don't know what you're doing. Put Joe Flacco in. It's an interesting thing. I don't know. I do think that in the long run, this is going to be a good thing for Anthony Richardson. And if you don't believe me, Anthony Richardson has already learned how to lie to the media.
He just told me that they were going to go with Joe, and that was that. And, I just had to, just take the information and just grow.
Anthony Richardson right there responding to the question of, do you know why you were benched? And he said no. And that's just not true. There's no way that Shane Steichen didn't give him an explanation as to why he got benched. Okay, I know everyone's saying it's not because of the tapping out play or anything like that, but it is. Dan, the show after mine from noon to 3, he got a text yesterday during a show from someone that that kind of knows what's going on with the Colts, saying that Jim Irsay wanted to bench Anthony Richardson because of that, and that's not what leaders do. And I get it; it's a terrible look, and the face of your franchise can't do that, no matter how young and naive they are. That's really why Anthony Richardson's being benched. He just doesn't understand what it means to be an NFL quarterback and the face of a franchise. Okay. And look, hopefully Anthony Richardson learns from it. But that being the reason why Anthony Richardson got benched is a little different from other young quarterbacks that we've seen get benched before, right? And since, the benching of Anthony Richardson happened, there's been conversation around, will he start another game for the Indianapolis Colts? I think no, right? The history of the NFL tells us that when young quarterbacks get benched, like they don't usually play again for that franchise. Sometimes they'll get traded away and they'll have a resurgence somewhere. Think, Sam Darnold, right? But there is a difference with Anthony Richardson being benched compared to these other guys. Bryce Young, Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett, and so on, all got benched because they just aren't very good at football, right? And they didn't show enough upside to justify, hey, a few more games and maybe they'll put it all together, right? They were really bad for a long stretch of games. And when you look at Anthony Richardson, that's just not the case. Okay, he was bad for a much shorter stretch of games, right? Really only 7 games where he started and finished them. Was he bad? Yes, I'm not saying he was good. But he had some big flashes, right? There were moments where it's like, okay, I can see why the Colts drafted him. I can see why they think he could turn into a big deal at some point. As we all know, in the Houston Texans game, his receivers didn't help him out a ton, right? And Shane Steichen's not dumb, right? Like he can watch the film and realize all of the shortcomings of the team around Anthony Richardson. I don't think Anthony Richardson's being benched because he's been bad. Okay, he's being benched because he's 22 and he doesn't understand what it means to be the face of a franchise. And because that's why he got benched, I think there's a greater chance for him to start again for the Colts. right? There's been discussion around Anthony Richardson throughout the entire year of, can you become more accurate as a passer? And when Anthony Richardson starts playing games again, whether that's here in Indianapolis or in Seattle in 3 years or whatever it is, like that'll continue to be a debate. I think you and I would both agree, though, that people tend to become more mature as they get older, and bad things happening, failure happening, like getting benched for a 39-year-old journeyman quarterback, usually quickens the maturation process. Okay, so because Anthony Richardson was benched due to a lack of understanding of what it is to be a quarterback in the NFL, that gives me slightly more hope that he'll play again in a Colts uniform. It just won't be this year, right? He just needs time to grow up and not be naive. And being, the second youngest starting quarterback or former starting quarterback in the NFL behind Drake May, who's 21, when he's 23, 24, when he's the age of Jaden Daniels, who led a college locker room for 6 years, when he's the age of Caleb Williams, who led a college locker room for 4 years, like when he kind of just grows up and matures, hopefully he'll be able to do those off the field things that are important when you are a starting NFL quarterback. But he's not right now. He's going to have an opportunity to sit behind a guy in Joe Flacco, who's played a lot of football, right? A guy who's played a ton of football, and he is the theme for this week. If you've been tuning into the show, then you know that on Thursdays, we always give some sort of title to, whatever game is coming up. And for this Colts Vikings game, the title is Joe Flacco, the season savior, Indianapolis edition. The Colts decided earlier in the week to bench who is seen to be the future of their franchise, Anthony Richardson. The 22-year-old athletic freak was benched for off-the-field reasons, it appears, for the 39-year-old NFL journeyman, Joe Flacco. The 17-year veteran quarterback was put in a similar situation last year when the Browns called him while he was sitting on his couch. Right? He shows up in Cleveland, plays 5 games, and leads them to the playoffs. Even though he didn't play particularly well, completing only 60% of his passes, throwing 13 touchdowns and a whopping 8 interceptions in 5 games, he was able to help lead the Browns to a 4-1 record as the starter. We will ignore the catastrophic playoff performance to keep the vibes up for the Colts' new starting quarterback. The Colts have gotten a taste of the Joe Flacco experience so far this year as he came in and helped the Colts hold on to a lead against the Pittsburgh Steelers and secure the win. He led them to a win over the terrible Tennessee Titans, and he got hot late against the Jacksonville Jaguars and put up good numbers. The Colts made this move because they apparently want to win now. Seems like, however, this was more of a Jim Irsay move. The Colts are going to the adult in the room who's currently the better quarterback, and hopefully that translates to more wins. And it needs to happen Sunday. The Colts need to start stacking wins. They sit at 4-4, and they're entering a tougher part of their schedule. They got the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, a team that's lost back-to-back games after starting 5-0. And there's a belief floating around out there that the experience that Joe Flacco has will allow him to do a better job than Anthony Richardson would have at identifying blitzes from this Vikings defense that blitzes more than any other team in the NFL. And that might be true. But whether he identifies the blitz or not, he still has to move around very well because this Vikings team is going to blitz. And there's going to be no Bernard Raymond on Sunday night. How does the protection hold up for the immobile quarterback? That is one of the two, I think, biggest storylines for this Colts offense in this game. Okay, the Colts offensive line allowed a 64% pressure rate against the Houston Texans last week with their starting left tackle, Bernard Raymond, playing the whole game. If that continues, that 64% pressure rate, if that continues, the Colts have no chance of beating the Vikings, and they will get embarrassed in front of the entire country. Okay, that is one of the two major storylines for the offense in this game. How do they handle the Vikings and all of the pressures that they're going to throw at them? Okay, we've seen, a Joe Flacco-led Colts offense. They threw the ball 30-plus times in both games that Joe Flacco started. Okay, so the Vikings are going to have opportunities to generate sacks because Shane Steichen likes to throw the football. The other part of the game when it comes to the Colts offense that I'm interested to see is if the Colts can run the ball. Their run game won't be nearly as good as it was with Anthony Richardson. Okay, because the Vikings don't have to worry about Anthony Richardson running the ball anymore. Okay, say what you want about Anthony Richardson, whether he should or shouldn't have been benched. You and I can both agree that Anthony Richardson helped the Colts run game tremendously. Okay, like the Colts are trading the success that they've had in the run game for hopefully more success in the pass game by going from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco. Their lowest yards per carry, the Colts, their lowest yards per carry in a game this year, where Anthony Richardson played the whole game, was 4.2. Okay, that is a good, solid rushing attack. And that's the worst that they were, right? They've had, like against the Houston Texans, between Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, they were at 6.3 yards per carry. Okay, the run offense with Anthony Richardson in is better than when Joe Flacco was in. The two games that Joe Flacco started and finished, between the two games, the Colts averaged 3.7 yards per carry. That is not very good. That's not good at all, right? So by going to Joe Flacco, the Colts are sacrificing having a better run game for having a better passing game. And look, the basis of any good offense, okay, like when you look at the best offenses in the NFL, they can all run the football. Okay, like when we look at the 49ers and we think about Kyle Shanahan and we think about Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and, Christian McCaffrey can run out wide and he can run routes. The reason why the 49ers offense with Kyle Shanahan is so good is because they can run the football. When you look at the Chiefs, it's the same thing. Think about Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the trick plays and all these things. Guess what the Kansas City Chiefs do really well? They run the football. Okay, when you look at the Lions and you think about Ben Johnson and Jared Goff just not throwing incompletions since week 4, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, it's like, flashy weapons. Their offensive tackles score touchdowns sometimes. Yes, that's what we think about. But the Lions run the football incredibly well. That is what the best offenses in the NFL do. Okay, and look, the Colts have arguably the best running back in the NFL right now because Christian McCaffrey isn't playing. And I think it's very easy to be like, we have Jonathan Taylor. They're going to be fine running the football. That's just not the case. The offensive line's banged up. It's slowly gotten worse as the year has progressed. This Vikings defense is good. And Anthony Richardson played a major role in the run game. Okay, like that was the biggest asset that he gave them, not just in terms of avoiding sacks, but being able to run that read option and pull the football and take off whenever he wants, or being able to drop back, look at the defense and be like, everybody's covered. Let me run and pick up 5 yards. That was the biggest asset that Anthony Richardson gave the Colts, and they don't have that anymore. Whatever you think of Richardson, whether you think he's great, whether you think he's going to be great, whether you think he's bad and could be great, whether you think he's bad and he's always going to be bad, you are going to notice his absence when the Colts run the football. Okay, now, the switch could totally be worth it if Joe Flacco comes out and he continues to throw the ball well like he has so far this year. But given Joe Flacco's history, that is simply not a guarantee. Okay, but Joe Flacco he's got a real opportunity to come in and help a decent Colts roster go 9-8, maybe 10-7, and make the playoffs. And sadly, here in Indianapolis, making the playoffs and losing in the first round is now considered a good season. Speaking of things that are good, no, not good. I got a great show in store today. Zach Hicks, he's going to join me at 11 o'clock today. Usually he joins me on Tuesdays, but he was busy this previous Tuesday. Cannot wait to have him on to get his thoughts on Anthony Richardson. He's been quite a fun guy to follow on Twitter because he's definitely got a lot of opinions and thoughts on it. So Zach Hicks, he's going to join me at 11. We're going to talk Anthony Richardson being benched, and we're also going to get into Sunday Colts Vikings. What is that going to look like? When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Indiana on the road against Michigan State. Big game. They have a chance to go 9-0, which will that's going to help them, right? They need to win every game that they play this year, with the exception of the Ohio State game. 11-1 with the one loss to Ohio State could earn them a college football playoff berth. So big game for Indiana on Saturday. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to talk about that.
More winners, more often. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Happy Halloween. Yeah, that's all I got for you. In terms of the week, let's talk about Indiana because the weekend is almost here. Tomorrow's Friday, and then Saturday we get more Indiana football, which we're all excited for, which is kind of weird. Like, when I took the job, I figured I'd be talking about Indiana basketball at this point in the year, but that is not the case. We're talking Indiana football, and I am so ready for November 5th because that's the first day that the college football playoff rankings come out. And I'm so intrigued to see where they rank Indiana because the whole point of the college football playoff coming out later in the year is to, allow the committee to kind of watch teams with no preseason rankings to dictate how they continue to rank teams, right? Like the issue with the AP poll is that there's a preseason AP poll, right? And so you take a team like Miami, who hasn't played nearly as well as Indiana has this year because they were ranked higher than Indiana was to start the year. Indiana hasn't been ranked in front of them because of it, right? And so if the college, I'm just very intrigued to see what the college football playoff committee does with Indiana because they're clearly one of the 12 best teams in the country. There is not a doubt in my mind, they're probably one of the 10 best teams in the country. And the AP poll has them at 13th. I'm very intrigued to see what the college football playoff committee does with them because Indiana's blowing everybody out. They look better than a lot of the teams that are ranked in front of them. So going to be interesting to see what they do with their rankings. With that being said, as you know, we title not only the Colts game every week, but we also title the Indiana Hoosiers game as just a way to hint at what the theme of the game is going to be. Okay, Indiana, the title for this week is Indiana takes the show on the road. Will the disrespect continue? The Indiana Hoosiers are hitting the road and heading to East Lansing to take on the Michigan State Spartans. Michigan State is yet another average Big Ten team standing in the way of Indiana's march to a perfect season. Michigan has lost 3 of their last 4. To be fair, those losses are to Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon. Those aren't exactly 3 easy opponents, and their one win came over Iowa, who isn't too terrible, right? They've beaten all of the bad teams on their schedule and Iowa. When it comes to Indiana versus Michigan State, there's only a couple of interesting storylines for the Hoosiers. One, is Curtis Rourke going to play? A report came out earlier in the week that he was progressing towards playing. We'll see. No official reports out yet. If he does, then there's not a doubt in my mind that Indiana not only wins this game, but they cover the 7.5-point spread. If it's Taven Jackson, it could be a little different. Okay, he wasn't great against Washington. Indiana won that game because of their defense and special teams, and it's hard to consistently win games that way. And more importantly, it's hard to cover games when you're trying to win that way. And that's why the Hoosiers need Curtis Rourke back, so we can all cash in on our bets for Indiana to cover the spread. The other interesting thing is that this game's on the road. Indiana's only played 2 road games all year. They played at UCLA, who's terrible and doesn't have home field advantage because people in Los Angeles don't care about you if you suck. And guess what? UCLA sucks. They're really bad, right? And then their other road game was at Northwestern, who's not very good, and they played on their practice field because for some reason Northwestern was like, let's do stadium renovations during the middle of the year. That's a good idea. This is Indiana's first real Big Ten road game. It's their first one this year. I don't think it's going to matter that much because Michigan State isn't as good as Indiana is. But it could have an impact on the game. Playing road games in college football, it's just really hard. Even when you're bad, but especially when you're ranked high like Indiana is. It can be a real challenge. Crowds are excited that you're there. There's just a little extra energy in the building. So, I'm very intrigued to see how Indiana handles being on the road in the Big Ten. Now, Michigan State, look, it's not Michigan. It's not Ohio State. It's not Happy Valley. It's not Penn State, right? Michigan State's not the most daunting environment in the world of college football, but it's a fan base that cares about football. People are going to show up. It's going to be the toughest environment Indiana has played in this year, and I'm very intrigued to see how they handle it. And honestly, I think they'll be fine. This is my favorite thing about Indiana football. Indiana's so good that if they just show up, play like them, and play like themselves, it doesn't really matter what the other team does. Like talking about Indiana football, I don't like the way that I'm going to word this, but I don't really know how else to say it. It's borderline boring, right? It's kind of like talking about Alabama when Nick Saban was there, right? Like you knew that it didn't matter who the opposition was. If Alabama just showed up and was just themselves, like 99% of the time, they were going to win. And it's the exact same thing with Indiana. If Indiana just shows up and they're disciplined and they're prepared, which with Kurt Signetti as the head coach, you expect them to be disciplined and prepared, then you know that they're going to win. It's the total opposite of talking about the Indianapolis Colts right now, right? Like when I talk about the Indianapolis Colts, like every little detail matters. Who's hurt? Who's not? Who's playing quarterback for the Colts? The Vikings third string safety's hurt. That's a depth issue. Maybe that'll matter. Like you're just looking and grasping for every little thing you can find to spin it positively for the Colts. Whereas with Indiana, the only thing that matters is like, did they show up? Are they prepared? Are they focused? If that happens, then they aren't going to lose to too many teams, right? Maybe Ohio State, Oregon, if they play them in the Big Ten title game. But either way, like it has just been such a pleasure to watch this team play football this year because they show up, they're consistently prepared, and it's like it doesn't matter who the other team has because you know that Indiana is going to play well. And you also know that they're talented. They should beat Michigan State easily on Saturday, right? And when they do, hopefully they'll be ranked in the top 10 because that's where they deserve to be ranked when the first college football playoff ranking comes out on Tuesday. If they aren't, then I'll be surprised. Like this is clearly one of the 10 best teams in the country. There's not a doubt in my mind. The only reason why they aren't ranked higher in the AP poll is because they weren't ranked during the preseason, which is a really dumb reason not to rank a team. Once again, those first college football playoff rankings, those come out on November 5th. I know that's why people are extremely excited for November 5th. So they should be ranked in front of a lot of teams that are ranked in front of them. They should. Like they're just clearly better. They're clearly better than Miami, who's currently ranked 5th in the AP poll. I think they're better than Iowa State. I think they're better than Clemson. They might be better than Tennessee. They've certainly looked better than Tennessee has. But once again, like for some dumb reason, all of those preseason rankings really matter. So Indiana, Michigan State, they're favored by 7.5 on the road. This should be a game that they win. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to look ahead to college football Saturday a little bit. I want to talk Ohio State, Penn State, right? Because that's the game at noon that everyone is going to be locked in on. I'm probably going to talk a little World Series after that. Pacers beat the Celtics. Thursday Night Football tonight. Houston's playing. What do they look like without Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs? Like I said, a lot to get to when we come back here in about 4 minutes. And then at 11 o'clock, Zach Hicks is going to join the show. We're going to talk the Anthony Richardson benching, and we're going to talk about just look ahead to the Vikings and the Colts game, what we kind of expect there. But when we come back here in 4 minutes, Ohio State, Penn State, the biggest game of the college football slate on Saturday, I'll give you my thoughts.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Biggest game of the day, Saturday. Sadly, it's not Indiana and Michigan State. I wish it was. That'd be great. Instead, Ohio State going on the road to take on Penn State. Can't wait for this game. It's so interesting. Okay, I'm telling you right now, I'm taking Ohio State to win that game because I just refuse to believe in Penn State until they actually do something worth believing in, right? You know, it's James Franklin. He just doesn't beat Ohio State. He never does it. He doesn't beat the better teams in the Big Ten. He just never really seems to find a way. With that being said, this Penn State team looks better than the other teams we've seen in the past. Ohio State, they've got some issues, especially at left tackle, right? Like they've got guys that, you know, just a lot of backups playing. You know, they're on their third string offensive tackle. You know, that's a bit of an issue. So can't wait to watch that game. That game is at noon on Saturday. That is the game of the day. The thing that I really want to talk about, though, the World Series. I just, you know, sometimes you watch games and you're just reminded of how human these guys are. It's really incredible. And it's, you know, you realize that they're human when they make these big mistakes. And if you watched the game last night, then you know where I'm going with this. Like the Yankees 1,000% deserve to lose that game. They're up 5-0 in the top of the fifth, sitting there. And I'm just like, what? Are you serious right now? Like this game's over. 5-0, fifth, Garrett Cole on the mound. No big deal. Then all of a sudden, all of these incredibly avoidable mistakes pile up one after the other. And they lose the World Series because of it. Aaron Judge drops an easy fly ball that leads to the Dodgers having runners on first and second. Volpe then makes a throwing error that leads to the bases being loaded. And then Garrett Cole, one of the best pitchers in postseason baseball history, right? Entering the playoffs, I believe entering the World Series. He was one of 4 pitchers in the history of baseball to have 20 or more postseason starts and have an ERA under 3, right? And Garrett Cole is like, this is why I'm one of the best pitchers, not only in baseball, but this is why I'm one of the best pitchers in the history of postseason baseball. He strikes out the next 2 batters, one being Shohei Ohtani. And then Garrett Cole was like, you know what? I'm going to undo everything that I just did. And he didn't cover first base on a ground ball hit to first baseman Anthony Rizzo. A run scores. It's 5-1. And then red hot Freddie Freeman gets to come to the plate. And as soon as he walked up, you're just like, yeah, he's going to get a hit here because that's just the way that the World Series has gone. No one is hotter than Freddie Freeman right now, right? The dude's just scalding at the plate. And sure enough, 2-run single. It's 5-3. and you know, it's guys on first and third, and you're like, okay, there's still 2 outs, ground ball here, inning over, Yankees have the lead, whatever. Nope. Teoscar Hernandez hits a double, scoring 2 more. It was 5-5. And when it happened, I was like, yeah, this game's over. The Yankees are not bouncing back from this. 5-5. Dodgers had all the momentum. And, you know, we hear Shane Steichen say this a lot in his press conferences, right? He talks about how NFL games are lost, not won, right? You know, the team that turns the ball over more tends to lose and all those things. Baseball, though, that's even more true. Baseball games are lost, not won. The team that usually commits more errors loses. The team that usually walks more batters loses. The team that misses a cutoff guy that leads to a runner getting into scoring position and then scoring later, that team usually loses. Right? Those are the type of things that lead to losses. And the Yankees checked every box that leads to losing in that 5th inning alone. Okay, they deserve to lose, and I'm so glad they did. I hate the Yankees, man. I do. That's just the truth of the matter. Because Yankee fans are straight up the worst. No way around it. And so, yeah, I'm so glad they lost, and I hope they never win anything ever again, I still can't believe it. Like it's the World Series and you're Garrett Cole and he's clearly like locked into what's going on, right? You don't strike out, Shohei Ohtani and I don't remember the other guy that he struck out like you don't do that in a high leverage situation in the World Series unless you're absolutely dialed in. And so to make all those huge pitches and then a ground ball to first, PFPs, you've been doing those. That's pitcher fielding practice. You've been doing those since February. You've been doing it since spring training. Like Garrett Cole's he's played baseball a long time. Okay, he's pitched in the major leagues for a long time. Like this is a guy, who's won the World Series before. Like this is a guy who, like, when that ball's hit, like you've got all the confidence in the world that Garrett Cole is going to run to first base and cover that bag. And he didn't. And I remember I'm sitting at home and the whole play transpires and I was just like, what? Like what? Like if it was a rookie, a guy who'd never pitched in the World Series before, I would be a little more understanding of what happened. But it's Garrett freaking Cole, a guy who's won the World Series before. And, I couldn't believe it. The fact that Aaron Judge dropped that fly ball, couldn't believe that either. He tried to redeem himself later. He had a double when they were down by 1, got into scoring position and all that, and gave them a chance late. And then, no one behind him could get a hit. So, I don't want to rake on him too hard, but still, that play, I can't believe it. I still can't. Yankee fans, they're going to remember that play for forever. And would it have mattered? Probably not. The Dodgers probably would have won in 6. That's probably what would have happened, but we'll see. Pacers, they won last night. They look good. I think that's arguably the best game that they've played. They beat the Pistons. They didn't look super great in that one. I thought they looked good against Orlando, but Paolo Banchero was just like, I'm going to go score 50 tonight. And so there was that. So this Pacers and Celtics game was, like I said, this is the best that the Pacers have looked, right? Benedict Mathurin played a ton. He scored 30, shot 53% from the field. Like the dude can just score. He's 6'7", super long arms. He's learning, he's shooting the ball better, right? And so he had the ball a lot late, which was almost catastrophic. He had a big turnover later in the game, but throughout, the first 46 minutes, the Pacers needed every bucket that he got because Tyrese Halliburton continues to struggle. And I'm going to talk about those here in a second, but Benedict Mathurin, man, he just played so well. Like he had a double-double. He grabbed 11 rebounds. Okay. Rick Carlisle said, the other day over on the other station that part of why Benedict Mathurin got benched is because he didn't rebound very well and he didn't defend very well. And, on the ball, I thought he did a good job. Off the ball, there were some mental lapses, of just not getting out to shooters, not staying attached to shooters, those types of things. But all in all, he was so much better. And they needed him because Andrew Nembhard he's got some tendinitis in his knee. He played 5 minutes and then he didn't play again. And so it was like, Mathurin, sink or swim, you're going to play a lot here. And thankfully he swam, like I said, really good on the ball. Defensively, had some mental lapses off the ball, but he's just got to be engaged more, which is really frustrating. But like I said, the rebounding and the scoring was, I think it succeeded whatever you thought he was going to give you last night. Then obviously Pascal Siakam, he played really well. He scored 29 points and was 11 of 20 from the floor. He hit the big 3, the game winner, right? So he played well. His defensive effort, really good last night. Whether he was guarding Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, it's this is the guy that I thought the Pacers were getting on the defensive side of the floor, right? Because when they made the trade last year, a lot of the emphasis was this guy's going to score. He's a real power forward, all those things. And I was like, the dude's athletic. He can move his feet and he can defend on the perimeter, which is important when you're playing a team like the Boston Celtics who are 5 out, drive and kick. If you help, we're going to shoot a 3. They shot a bunch of them last night. They didn't shoot it as well as they normally do until late when they came storming back, when the Pacers were up by, I think they were up by 20 at one point. You're sitting there, it's just like, yeah, they're up by 20, but that means absolutely nothing given not only how the Celtics shoot, but just how many threes they shoot. The Celtics shot 57 threes last night, which is crazy. That is absurd. That is an incredible amount of 3-point shots. And so it was a fun game to watch. Like the effort was there from the Pacers. Obviously, they wanted to avoid being 1-4, 2-3 now. Not too sure when they play again. Hopefully not today. You hate playing a back-to-back coming off of an overtime game, but they play the Pelicans on the road tomorrow night, and then they've got the Magic on the 4th. So a day to rest, and then they're down there in New Orleans. I want to talk about Halliburton now because he wasn't good again. Okay, he was really bad in the first half. He only scored 1 point, and I'm like I said, we're five games into the year. I'm not going to freak out about Halliburton. He got it going. He was much better in the second half. He finished with a pretty good stat line: 17 points, 12 assists, 6 rebounds. He was +9, which is like that was the second highest on the team for them, behind Siakam, who was really good. But my issue with Halliburton last night, if you watched him in the first half, maybe not late in the second quarter, but he would go by whoever was guarding him, or he'd come off the screen. He'd get 2 feet in the paint, and it's Halliburton's like 6'5", 6'6". Like the Pacers are just huge across the board. That's part of why you think they'd be better on defense, but that's we can talk about that a different time. Halliburton, he'd come off screens or he'd go by somebody, get into the lane, and it's like, bro, like you're 6'6" and you got Peyton Pritchard guarding you. Like, can you just like go over him and hit a floater or get all the way to the bucket? And he wouldn't do that. He'd jump and then he would look to pass. He was very clearly driving to the basket with the intent to pass the basketball. And like that just doesn't work. It doesn't. Like, you have to score. Like the reason why guys like LeBron James, right? Now this is obviously the clearest example. Not saying that Halliburton's LeBron James, but the reason why he has so many assists and the reason why he's able to get shots for his teammates is because he's constantly a threat to score and he's constantly looking to score. And like watching Halliburton last night, it didn't, especially in the first half. Like I said, the second half he was much better. The first half, it didn't feel like he was looking to score. Like I said, he'd get 2 feet in the paint and then he wouldn't even look at the basket. And it's like what's the point of working your way, 10 feet away from the bucket to not try to score? And then he'd kick out to a guy that was guarded. And it's like, why are you like why is that the play that you're making? Just go score. It's one-on-one. Like, you're one of the 15 or 20 best basketball players in the world. Like, go hit a layup, please. And, like I said, in the second half, he was much better. He hit some floaters. But I think the frustrating thing is with Halliburton, at least to start this year, like the only time he really looks to score is when he's trying to hit a step back three, and he's just not shooting the ball very well right now. He was 2 of 10 from 3 last night, 7 of 19 from the floor overall, right? So it means he was 5 of 9 from not the 3-point line, which is like that's pretty good efficiency. And so I just wish that he would look to attack the lane a little more, and when he got in there, that he would really look to score, right? And that's what we saw in the second half and in overtime, right? He was aggressive. When he got in the lane, he looked to score, and that's why he finished with 17 points as opposed to 0 field goals made like he had in the first half, right? Like that aggressiveness that he showed in the second half has to be there the entire game. Okay. Thankfully, Siakam and Mathurin showed up in big ways to allow the Pacers to win that game, because Halliburton, once again, didn't have it. He better figure it out really quickly. Final thing here before Zach Hicks joins the show at 11 o'clock. Houston playing the Jets tonight. I'm so intrigued to watch this game. And because the biggest thing I'm paying attention to is what does this Houston Texans offense look like without both Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs? Nico Collins is still out with that hamstring injury. Stephon Diggs, he's out for the rest of the year. He tore his ACL. So like I'm not worried about the Texans moving the football, right? Because they have Joe Mixon, like good running back. They're going to have success on the ground. CJ Stroud, like that's a good quarterback. But how explosive are they going to be? Because explosive plays keep you in games. Okay, say what you want about Anthony Richardson, but the reason why all the games that he played and were close is because he had the ability to generate 2 or 3 big explosive games a game, explosive plays a game, excuse me, and they usually led to touchdowns. That's why they were in every single game. Nico Collins was that guy for Houston. We saw their offense kind of take a step back with him out. Now there's no Stephon Diggs. It's going to be like a lot of Tank Dell. So I'm interested to see how they look without 2 of their 3 best receivers. Like, do they rely on the run game? Like, do we just get a bunch of Joe Mixon carries? Like, that's very possible. We'll kind of see how that looks. This is a game that Houston could undoubtedly lose. And that's obviously very important for the Colts because they're two games back, but it's really 3 because the Texans have the tiebreaker. And the Jets are 2-6. They've gone all in. They are desperate for any sort of win. And as bad as their record is, it's no secret how talented the Jets are. So they can beat anybody. Tonight should be a fun game to watch. Just a desperate Jets team trying to beat this banged up Houston Texans team that's going to be without 2 of their 3 best wide receivers. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, my guy Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, he's going to join the show. We're going to talk Flacco being named the starter, and we're going to look ahead to Sunday, Colts versus Vikings. That's coming your way here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Happy Halloween. Zach Hicks didn't join on Tuesday, but he's here today on a Thursday, which is probably better given the news we got about Anthony Richardson the other day. Zach, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, I'm not even going to be my fun self on this one, John. I mean, it's just, oh, man, what a frustrating, crazy week, man.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. What was your, like, when the news broke, how surprised were you? Were you, like, super upset? Were you, like, throwing stuff against the wall? I doubt that, but I'm curious, like, what was your reaction? Because you're, obviously in a very similar boat as me of like wanting to see Richardson play and develop this year. And that's obviously not going to happen anymore.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I got to the point where I was throwing stuff. Like I'm emotionally not as invested in the Colts in that degree to where I'm going to be throwing stuff, but this is my job and it's something I'm passionate about my job and doing this job. And, it's funny. I said it on a show the other day because I did a recording right after they announced it. And I didn't go into it with any facts or anything. I just went into it pure emotional reaction and stuff, which is something I rarely do. But I figured it's what everybody needed and wanted right in that moment. And I kind of went back to when the Colts drafted Richardson and just the feeling of like, finally, we're committing to a young guy. Like, finally, we're just committing to doing the real franchise thing of take a young guy, see if it works. And look, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like, if you had me on Monday or Tuesday this week, I would have told you like, hey, we've got 4 games in a row of Richardson that are just not good enough. And if it stays like this by the end of the season, then yeah, the Colts need to reevaluate what they have at quarterback because this play is just not sustainable play at quarterback. But I was still fully committed to giving him the rest of the year to figure it out. And then if you got any kind of flashes of what he could be, you ride this thing out even more. But to kind of turn it on right now and just say, you know what, we tried this thing for a year, and a year and a half or whatever. We gave him 10 starts, and let's go back to our tried and true of Joe Flacco, or AKA the pretty much any veteran quarterback they could have brought in. I kind of like the allusion I made on the show was like, it's like you have that friend who only watches like one sitcom over and over again, like the reruns of like, I'm gonna watch Parks and Rec for the 50th time instead of dipping my toes into like Breaking Bad. And then maybe they dip their toes into it for like 2 episodes and they're like, nah, it's too boring. I'm going back to Parks and Rec because I feel more comfortable with my Parks and Rec. It's kind of what it is, man. It's like, oh, we can't be losing with this young quarterback. Like what if it doesn't work and we have a bad season? Oh no, like Parks and Rec will get me my steady 9 wins and I'll just be happy with that. It's kind of what it felt like to me. And look, I'm not saying that for this illusion to work, I'm not saying that like Richardson was going to be the Breaking Bad of quarterbacks, the perfect, show of quarterbacks, but like, you never know until you keep giving it a shot, and like really test it out. And again, like if by the end of the season, you're looking at it and say like, look, this kid regressed from his first year. He completed 40% of his passes and we were seeing some immature things behind the scenes or something, then sure, reevaluate from there, but at least let the thing play out a little bit. Like, this feels very premature. It feels very much in desperation. Like, hey, we're at 4-4. We're 1-3 in the division. We need to make a big move if we want to make the playoffs this year. And it's like, what are you expecting to do even if you make the playoffs this year? I mean, we've talked about it on this show a couple times in the past couple of weeks. It's like, to make the playoffs and do what? Like, Flacco was arguably with a better team last year with Cleveland, making it in the playoffs, and they got blown out in the first week of the playoffs. Like, what are you expecting to do here? So I don't know, man. Like, it's not super surprising because, again, Richardson wasn't playing well, and I'm not trying to defend it from the standpoint of like, oh, you're benching your good playing quarterback, good young quarterback. Like, you're benching a struggling young quarterback, but like, to just move off the project entirely. I mean, they drafted one of the most raw quarterbacks in the history of the sport in the top 10. And to give him 10 starts, man, like, and like, here's the thing, like, I know I'm going on a rant here, but like, here's the thing. They had opportunities to not play him. Like, if there were any time after you drafted him, like before year 1 last year, to where you don't think he's ready maturity wise or ready talent-wise, you could have just started Gardner Minshew last season. And then coming into this season, you could have said, hey, you know what? Coming off of shoulder surgery, we want to take it slow with him. We want him to keep growing behind the scenes. We're going to start Flacco this season. Those two are probably better optics-wise and better for his confidence and better for his development if you take either of those out. But to take this out, which is halfway through the season after he's already started a handful of games and struggled, and it feels like kind of piling on the confidence low that he's on right now, it feels like it's just been handled so poorly. So I don't know if Richardson will work out in Indy. I doubt it at this point. He might be one of those guys where he hits like 26, 27 and find some success somewhere else. But yeah, it feels like, I mean, they took the shot at the raw quarterback, and it seems like they're just ready to jump ship because it's not developing as fast as what they thought. And when, look, this kid was going to be a multi-year project. I don't know what they were expecting with it.
Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking Anthony Richardson being benched, and eventually we're going to look ahead to the game on Sunday. I think I'm with you entirely. Like, I just, like, 9-8. I just, like, look, I grew up a Miami Dolphins fan. Like, I've lived 9-8 or 7-9 every single year, and it's no fun. It's no fun whatsoever. And that's part of why, like, I'm a little annoyed by the move, because eventually, like, you just have to suck it up and deal with the young quarterback. And if it doesn't go well, then you go 4-13 and you draft whoever at the top. Like, people are really excited about Washington this year. And one of my points has been the reason why Washington is so good this year is because they went 4-13 last year. So, like, even
and they tore everything down. They tore like, you look at that. I remember Ron Rivera said before the season, he said, hey, when they win a Super Bowl, remember, it's my guys they drafted. And then they came in and got rid of every Ron Rivera draft pick from the past couple of years. They tore it all down and they restarted the whole thing. And I'm not saying that's what the Colts need to do right now, but, like, it's what they tore it all down and they started like you're saying right there.
Yeah. And it's just like the reason why they're good this year is because they went 4-13 and they drafted Jaden Daniels, who's really good. And that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like, Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud, like, these are, I think, two exceptions. Even though I guess we might see a little bit better quarterback play from rookies because the guys are playing 6 years in college now as opposed to like 3 or 4. But like it's so backwards. Like, you have to suck at some point to be really good in the NFL. That's just kind of the way that things goes. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that way for the Colts this year. What do you think is, like, best case scenario Joe Flacco, like, record-wise, can go with this Colts team?
9 wins. Maybe they can get 10. I mean, they're at 4-4 now. Their next 4 games, like, winnable-ish, I guess. Like, not really winnable. Like, they have an outside shot because Flacco's been on a little bit of a heater when he's played this year. But realistically, like, the odds of beating Minnesota, Buffalo, or Detroit, like, if you can steal one of those games, you're feeling pretty good. You got to beat the Jets if you want to get to, that 9 to 10 win window. And then you basically got to go perfect by that final 5. I mean, I guess you'll have one room for error if you do steal one of those 3. So yeah, like 9 to 10 maybe is the highest you could go with this year. But realistically, I think you're probably sitting at like 7, 8, maybe 9 is probably what you're looking at. Because even like I say this, like the final 5 games we've been saying all year is like the easier stretch, but like Denver's a little bit of a feisty team right now. They're they have a good defense, and they're so they're the team that they play right before or right after the bye. New England shouldn't be too difficult. Tennessee shouldn't be too difficult. Jacksonville always gives them trouble, so I'm not going to say that that's not too difficult right there. Yeah. And then the Giants, the Giants aren't this great team, but like Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Malik Neighbors, like it's not like they have scrubs on that team. So yeah, I don't know, man. Like 9 wins seems right to say because that's what the Colts feel like they're aiming for right now. But yeah, that's probably where I would land with this team, 8 to 9, probably.
That's where I'm at. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking Richardson being benched, just kind of the future of the Colts this year. Here's kind of the thing that's bothered me. I think that the people supporting this move have just like chalked the Colts in as like a playoff team with Joe Flacco. even though, as you said, the Colts have had a different quarterback every year for the last 6 years. And they've only made the playoffs twice. And the 2 times that they made the playoffs, one was with Rivers, who's, I don't know if I'd call him a legend. Like, he's not Manning and those guys, but had a great career as a quarterback. And the other time was with Andrew Luck, one of the best quarterback prospects we've ever seen. Every other year they've had a journeyman. They have missed the playoffs. And so I think that's the other frustrating thing for me is like, this isn't like a guaranteed playoff thing. Like, it's not, you kind of feel the same way.
Yeah. Like, it's not like this is a Super Bowl ready roster and Richardson was just holding it back completely. Honestly, if you look at a lot of the advanced stats, like, yes, Flacco's passing efficiency is much, much better than Richardson's. And if you look at the insane heater that Flacco's on third downs this year, that's really the biggest difference in their passing. Like, Flacco on third down is like the number 1 quarterback in football by like miles right now, where Richardson's been the worst quarterback in the league on third down this year. But if you look at like their early down efficiency, like just in terms of like overall, like Richardson leads a really strong rush offense when he's out there because of his impact in the run game, where Flacco is a fine pass offense. But honestly, the Colts' early down efficiency is better with Richardson. It's not like when Richardson's out there, they're not scoring. Like, outside of the Green Bay game, I think they've hit I guess they hit 16 against Miami, but that was in a win. But they've hit 20 in all the other ones with Richardson. Like, it's not like they're not scoring with Richardson. So unless you think Flacco makes you like a 30-point per game team, which, look, you're not going to be playing Jacksonville every week, so I don't think you're going to hit 30 points every week with Flacco, then yeah, this isn't like a Super Bowl winning team. This is like, you probably did enough to move yourself from like the 24th best team or like the 22nd best team in football to like 18th or 19th best, which is still not the playoffs, right? Like, it's 14 teams that make the playoffs. So that's still not the playoffs right there. So I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a move. Like, yeah, I do think Flacco is, like, for lack of a better term, like an upgrade right now, but I don't think it's like that massive of an upgrade. It's not like you're benching, rookie Aaron Rodgers for prime Brett Favre or something. It's not like you're doing that. You're benching, a young quarterback who's struggling, but they're still getting points with him, for a veteran quarterback who's on an insane heater on certain things. I mean, again, he's the best quarterback in the NFL this year in the fourth quarter, and the best quarterback in football this year on third downs. Do we think that sustains over the course of the season? We'll see, because that's where his production's been this year. But that's kind of what they're banking on, is that guy to come in and all of a sudden fix this. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if it'll lead to big things. I don't think this is like some massive upgrade thing. Like, and if the Colts are really going win now, like, I guess be active in the trade market, but we know how this is. They're not going to be active in the trade market.
There's no way.
So I don't know. Like, it's such a weird thing. It's like, I see a lot of people saying like they owe it to the veterans on this team to win now, but like, when Buckner re-signed this offseason, when Grover Stewart re-signed this offseason, with Kenny Moore re-signed, when Michael Pittman Jr. re-signed, who were they telling these guys the quarterback was going to be? Were they saying it was a win now quarterback, or were they saying, hey, we have this 22-year-old kid who completed 50% of his passes in college, that's going to be your starting quarterback? It's not like they didn't know.
Yeah,
they weren't blindsided. Yeah, they weren't blindsided on who the quarterback. They signed back here knowing who that quarterback was going to be. And I'm not saying with him struggling as much as he did this year that they just have to accept it and be happy with it. But like, we can't say that they didn't know what they were getting into. Like, this was always a feasible outcome for Richardson. Honestly, it was probably more the likely outcome for Richardson, was him struggling like this. So I don't know. Like, these guys knew what they were signing on for. So to owe it to them as veterans because they only have a couple years left, like, come on. Like, I don't buy that. They knew what they were signing up for.
Yeah, I'm assuming you've seen all the clips. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking Anthony Richardson being benched for Flacco and kind of just looking ahead. I'm assuming you've seen all the clips of the players being legitimately surprised by the move, which I think feeds into your point of a lot of these guys re-signed knowing that Anthony Richardson was going to be the quarterback. I don't think he was benched for on the field stuff. I really think it's because he's 22 years old and he seems a little naive at times. Not even just talking about the tap out, but like not knowing to lie to the media about why you came out and all those things. Like, which to be fair, he's learning. I don't know if you saw his stuff yesterday, but someone asked him.
He lied a little bit.
Yeah, he did. Someone was like,
lie a little bit.
do you know why you got benched? And he was like, I have no idea. He just told me I was benched. And I was like, that is not true. Good job, Anthony. We're
Yeah,
getting
I was
there.
like, you know what? You're winning. You're passing the test now. You learned to lie a little bit. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, it's also on the Colts, though, when he pulled himself out, just send a couple trainers over to him to kneel down next to him or something. Like,
Yeah.
Like, look, Aaron Rodgers limps off the field every time he throws an incomplete pass. Like, come on, let's lie a little bit here. Like, that's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, that happened, and I was like, well, there's a silver lining. He's learning a little bit. Back to what you were saying though about the on the field stuff. I am of the opinion it is not worth sacrificing what is, I think, one of the better run games in the NFL with the Colts to improve the passing game. Just because when I look at the best offenses in the NFL, like we talk a lot about the quarterbacks and how well they throw the ball, but like the Lions run the crap out of the ball. The 49ers run the crap out of the ball. The Eagles with Saquon have been doing it. The Chiefs, they run the ball really well. They do it a little differently than other teams, but like that presence is still there. And when I've, just the 2 full games we got with Flacco, I know one of them, Jonathan Taylor, didn't play, but like they didn't run the ball well against Tennessee. And part of why they ran the ball well against Jacksonville is because Joe Flacco had an uncharacteristic 21-yard scramble that boosts the numbers up. And so I don't think it's worth it. Do you think that it is?
No, honestly, I think an easier fix would have just been leaning into the run game a little bit more on those first and second downs, and making it so when Richardson is, because again, Richardson's been the worst quarterback in football this year on third down. Like, you can't deny that, and just from the eye test and also from the metrics, it's been really bad on third down. But I think if you lean more on the run game on first and second down, and you try to get him into more third and short situations, you try to even avoid third down in general, because the way that Taylor's been running with Richardson, it's like almost 5 yards a carry with Richardson this year. And then his couple snaps that he had with Flacco, it was 3.6 yards per carry. And that was on like 16 carries, and one of those carries went for like 25 yards. So I think it was like 16 for 58, and one of those went for 25. So it was like, 15 for like 30 before that. It was terrible when he was out there with Flacco. So yeah, I mean, like just ride Taylor, ride the run game with Richardson, and then get to third and short. I feel like that's an easier fix to avoid some of these things. And I think part of the issue was like Richardson is getting out there and throwing the ball 30 something times a game.
Agreed.
And you and I even said before the season, like, keep that number like 20, like really lean on the run game. Even if you have to use him in the run game, like it's fine. But I don't know. Like, I don't think it really changes too much. You are sacrificing one of the best run games in the league when Richardson's out there, and maybe bringing it, like, again, at best average is what you're doing. And then your hope is that when Richardson's been out there, I think the Colts have been like a bottom 10 offense passing in football this year. Like, they have a lot of explosives, but that's really it. So you're hoping that the efficiency you gain in the passing game without Richardson and with Flacco in there can supplement the loss that you get in the run game. But that goes back to the overall point that's like an even push, like you're not really gaining anything then. You're just supplementing one part of the offense. Like, I think I saw a thing where the Colts run pass split with Richardson this year is in like a 52%. And then you go to Flacco and it's like 63% pass and much less run. So like, you're just supplementing a run game for a passing game. Like, it's not like you're getting much better, you're just doing it differently. So again, I don't know if this makes you better. I think it makes it look prettier, maybe. Like, you don't see the 11 of 30 passing line afterwards, but that's really it. Like, you'll see like a 20 of 30 passing line. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how much better this makes the Colts,
Yeah, I'm with you, joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking about Joe Flacco taking over as the Colts starter. Do you think we see Anthony Richardson in any sort of like goal line package down in like the red zone area?
Maybe. He really hasn't been that great in the red zone from what I expected going into the year.
Yeah.
Like, if we're being completely honest on him, it's not like I thought going into the year that he was going to be just a dominant red zone threat with just the way that his rushing ability is, and with how talented his arm is, he could fit into those tight windows in the red zone. But we've seen a lot of mistakes from him in the red zone this season, notably that Chicago interception. There's been, against Miami? He had the fumble on the fumbled snap in the red zone. So I'm not sure if the trust level is there right now for him to not turn the ball over in the red zone. But I think in theory, if you did have that trust, certainly would be a great red zone threat, or at least, I saw someone joking about it, but like, honestly, like if 2 quarterback sets or 2 quarterback like systems were a thing in the NFL, the Colts' best move, honestly, would be Richardson on first and second down, and then Flacco if you get into like a third and 7.
Yeah. Seriously.
Like if we're being honest, you get that dominant run game early in the series with a quarterback who can kind of pass it, and then you get Flacco out there to give you his steer on third down and get you the first down again. But I know that's not a realistic thing when it comes to the NFL. But I don't know, man. I don't know. It's so difficult to say like what the Colts can do or what they should do or what they're going to do, because like this is such an unprecedented thing, like how often does like, I know people were throwing this at me the other day, but like quarterbacks get benched. A lot of young quarterbacks get benched all the time and they reemerge as good quarterbacks elsewhere. But how often do they reemerge as good quarterbacks with the same team? Very, very few, if any. Like some people were throwing Terry Bradshaw at me, but they were basically like Bradshaw was basically playing a different sport back in the day. Like I think maybe Tua got benched for performance. I can't remember if Tua got benched for performance. People were telling me that he was, but I really, you know what, you would probably know, right? Was Tua ever benched for performance?
He was. I mean, are you talking about when Brian Flores was there? He was, but then again, like it was weird because like he didn't really start the season, and then I felt like there was like pressure from the owners, so Flores played him like a little bit, and then he was like, you know what, no, I'm the head coach, so I'm going to pull him out, and so it was just that whole situation was really weird in and of itself. But I guess he did get pulled for performance. Yeah.
Okay, there's one then. There we go. That we got to hope that Anthony Richardson become Tua. There we go.
I don't know about that. Pay a guy $53 million who can't throw it 40 yards down the field. I don't know if I like that. A few more questions for you about the game on Sunday before I let you go. Do the Colts have a shot on Sunday night? Let's start there.
Oh man, dude, if I know this Colts team, they're going to win by like 4 scores. It's going to be a blowout victory. Like, look, if we know the Colts, the second we start criticizing them for something stupid that they do or something that's committing towards mediocrity, they're going to come in and win. Remember in 2022, they hired Jeff Saturday. The whole week, everyone's going crazy about how stupid this is. Jeff Saturday, the worst coach ever, like bringing guy off ESPN. And what do they do in his first game? They won.
That's right.
They won against the Raiders, and then it was all downhill from there. You had the biggest collapse in NFL history. You had the Cowboys beat down after that. But like the Colts were proven right for 1 week. They're really good at that, being proven right for 1 week. So if I know anything about this Colts team, they're probably going to somehow win this one and win it in like convincing fashion or something like that.
Fair enough. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking about Colts and Vikings on Sunday. How many times do the Vikings sack the statue that is Joe Flacco on Sunday? It's at least 6. I think he's going to get pummeled back there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the Vikings approach it, because Richardson lately, the goal has been to blitz him because he's had trouble identifying blitzes this year. Now, if you miss that tackle, you might be in some trouble, like we saw with a little bit in that Dolphins game. But for the most part, with Richardson, it was blitz him. He's not going to identify, and you can maybe get some sacks or force a bad throw from him. With Flacco, that ball's going to be out a lot quicker. That ball's going to be out to Downs in the flat, who can make some things happen. So, I think if the Vikings offense is scoring on the Colts defense, which it very well could be early in offense, when you never know what you're getting out of the Colts defense. If the Colts are in like a bad situation where they're trailing early, I could see this being like a 5, 6, 7 sack game for the Vikings. But if the Colts can stay in the lead a little bit, or stay close to the margins a little bit, I could see this being like a lower sack game, because the Colts are just throwing like quick screens and like quick outs and stuff, which will make everyone upset, because like, wow, they're calling quick shots for Flacco, but never did for Richardson. But,
yeah, seriously.
I think it could be something like that if the game plan is a little bit closer, if like the game's a little bit closer in the game situation.
All right, Zach, last question for you before I let you go. Before I ask, I want to preface this by saying I hope neither one of these things happen, okay?
Okay.
Which would be funnier? Joe Flacco comes out and throws like 4 interceptions, or Joe Flacco gets hurt on like the third play of the game. Anthony Richardson comes in and they win. Which would be funnier?
Oh, dude. Okay, look, man. Flacco getting hurt and Richardson coming out like after a couple plays would be so much fun. Would be, like it just or like funny, not like funny, haha. Funny, like weird.
Yeah.
It would just be awkward for everyone. Like, oh man, that or would be the funniest thing would be Flacco goes out there and starts for one snap, and then Richardson goes out. It's all like a mind game just to get the
that
Vikings
would be
preparing
funny.
for Flacco.
That'd be really
like, why
funny.
not? Well, let's lean into the goofiness of this, but no, I think any scenario where Richardson's actually playing in this game outside of like a blowout or something would, oh God, it'd be so ironic and just.
I think
it could be insanity.
I think it'd be so funny if, because I just remember last year, like Aaron Rodgers, big deal, tears his Achilles on the fourth play of the game, and then it's Zach Wilson the rest of the way. Like,
right,
obviously, like
right.
I hope that doesn't happen to Joe Flacco because he seems like a really nice guy. He does give the Colts a better chance to win right now. But like if he came out and he like sprained his ankle and then Anthony Richardson runs out there and it's like peak Anthony Richardson, the Colts score like 30-something points. He's like 20 of 28 throwing the football for like 350 yards and he runs for another 60. My show on Monday would be awesome. So I think that's what I'm rooting for.
Here's the thing. I will say this, from one person who runs the show to another person who runs the show here, regardless of what happens on Sunday, the post show is going to be good.
Oh,
it's like no matter what happens, like unless the Colts win like really boring or lose really boring, but like Flacco comes out, loses this game, whether he's a disaster or not, we can criticize the Colts for making the move, right?
Yeah.
Flacco comes out and wins the game, we could be like, well, shoot, maybe they do what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like no matter what, we have good content after this. Now, we're not going to have any content come December because everyone will be checked out by then. Yeah. But we can capitalize on this one at least right here. So that's a win for us there, buddy.
It'll be good. Like it's really weird. Like when you do a show, because I know like you're from kind of the DC area. Like you grew up a Commanders fan. I grew up a Dolphins fan.
Yep.
The Dolphins are playing the Colts a couple weeks ago. And the Colts forced that fumble and they get on it. And I like jump off my couch, super excited. And my wife's like, Jonathan, you're a Dolphins fan. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm rooting for my show. I want things to go well. So my show on Monday's good. And so it's just, it's different, which isn't, a bad thing. It's just different. But Zach, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always. I greatly appreciate your time, man.
Of course, buddy. I'll see you.
See ya. That is Zach Hicks. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks. 2, check out his podcast, Locked on Colts. He does a great job over there. Very passionate, loves the Colts, does a great job covering them in all phases. Speaking of the Colts, when we come back here in 4 minutes, more thoughts, really the players' thoughts on Anthony Richardson being benched. I got a lot of audio on that. And then as we do every Thursday, we're going to title the Colts game. That's coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice day. Anthony Richardson probably isn't because he got benched for Joe Flacco. It was very interesting listening to his teammates react to the benching yesterday when, media had access to ask them all the questions. Zaire Franklin, he found out on social media, which is just, I don't know. It's like the more I hear, the more it seems like this wasn't a decision made by Shane Steichen. Like, no matter what you think about Zaire Franklin, like, this guy's one of the captains. Okay. Like, he's clearly a leader in that locker room for, like, if Anthony Richardson was being benched because he lost the locker room, like, I feel like Shane Steichen would have talked to the guys that are the leaders of that locker room. He seemed genuinely surprised by the decision. And Michael Pittman Jr., he was surprised as well at the decision that the Colts made. Here is Michael Pittman Jr. on his reaction to Anthony Richardson being benched.
Obviously, it was kind of shocking. I mean, it caught me off guard. And that's the good and bad thing about football is there's like opportunity and for everybody. And like, I don't think that this is over. I mean, I think that he's going to come back better from this.
Michael Pittman Jr. right there talking about just how surprised he was at Michael Pittman Jr. or at Anthony Richardson being benched. Look, this is another guy that I believe is one of the leaders of the locker room. Shane Steichen clearly has respect for Michael Pittman Jr., right? You just know that from the way that Steichen has talked about the toughness that Michael Pittman Jr. has. And it's just surprising that Shane Steichen wouldn't talk to these guys if Anthony Richardson really lost the locker room. The biggest thing, though, from this quote is the way that Michael Pittman Jr. went out of his way to make the point that he thinks we'll see Anthony Richardson start again in Indianapolis. Okay? And so that once again points to the idea that Anthony Richardson didn't lose the locker room. Like, this was clearly a decision made by Jim Irsay. Anytime an owner gets overly involved, things don't go well. Look at the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones. That team is bad. Okay, they haven't won a playoff. They've won one playoff game in the Dak Prescott era. And through this entire time, Jerry Jones has been incredibly involved. And then Jets owner, Woody Johnson, he's gotten super involved in personnel. Go get Aaron Rodgers. Give him whatever he wants. Get Hassan Reddick in here. I'm going to give him a blank check. He's become overly involved. And the Jets are 2-6, and they're a bad football team. And chances are they're going to be 2-7 after tonight. Owners getting involved is not a good thing. Okay? Like, you hire people to do their jobs. Like, Jim Irsay's been around a long time, right? His dad owned the team. He's owned the team for quite some time now. But what's the point in hiring a coach if you aren't going to let him coach? If you aren't going to allow him to make important decisions? Like, Jim Irsay compared Shane Steichen to Don Shula 2.5 months ago. Okay, that's the winningest coach in NFL history. And then, after comparing Shane Steichen to Don Shula 2.5 months ago, he was like, you know what, Shane? You don't know what you're doing. Let me help you out. Bench Anthony Richardson. Put in Joe Flacco. Now, there might be some good in this because I firmly believe that part of why Anthony Richardson got benched is because he doesn't know how to lie, right? He told us that he came out of the game because he was tired, right? If he just lied, I think he would still be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts heading into this game. But he didn't lie. He told the truth, which is a noble thing to do, but maybe not about that. Here's Anthony Richardson lying to the media when he was asked about why he got benched.
He just told me that they were going to go with Joe, and that was that. And, I just had to, just take the information and just grow.
Look, there's not a world where a coach doesn't explain why someone got benched. Okay, like, I know everyone's saying it's not because of the tapping out, the tapping on the head to come out for a play, but like, it is. Dan got a text during his show yesterday from someone from the Colts saying that Jim Irsay made the call because that is a terrible look in the face of your franchise. Can't do that no matter how young and naive they are, because that's really Anthony Richardson's biggest issue. He's just young and naive, and to be fair to him, there's a lot of 22-year-olds in the country that are young and naive. The difference is they aren't the face of an NFL franchise. So hopefully Anthony Richardson learns from it. And I've been thinking here just over the past day, like, is this benching any different from the other guys who have been benched? And for Anthony Richardson, it is. Like, when you look at the Bryce Young benching and the Zach Wilson and Kenny Pickett and the rest of the young quarterbacks that have gotten benched at some point in their career, it's because they aren't good. It's because the franchise has deemed this guy's not good enough and he didn't show enough upside for us to continue to play him. That's just not the case for Anthony Richardson, right? He's had some big flashes. Okay, like when the coaches go back and they look at the tape from the Houston game, they're going to see everything we saw in terms of the receivers had drops and they didn't work back to the ball, and he was pressured on 64% of his snaps. Like, they're going to realize all of the shortcomings from the guys around Anthony Richardson. Okay, like, he got benched not because he's bad. He got benched because he's 22 years old and he doesn't understand what it means to be a franchise quarterback. That wasn't the case for a lot of these other guys that have gotten benched. And there has been discussion around Anthony Richardson of whether or not you can become more accurate. If Anthony Richardson plays again, that will continue to be a debate. Something, though, that I think you and I would both agree on is that people tend to get more mature as they get older. Okay? And when bad things happen, like being benched, it usually quickens that maturation process as well. Because Anthony Richardson was benched because of a lack of understanding of what it is to be the leader of an NFL team, that gives me slightly more hope that he'll play again for the Colts. With that being said, if I had to make a bet on whether or not he'd start another game for the Colts, barring any Joe Flacco injury this year, I would bet on him not doing so. When we come back, here in about 4 minutes, every Thursday we title the Colts game and the Indiana game. I'm going to give you the title for the Indianapolis Colts game on Sunday Night Football when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys have had a nice week. Happy Halloween. All those things. Colts, Vikings, Sunday Night Football. Can't wait to watch that game. And as we do every Thursday, we give titles because titles are important. I'm not going to read your book if your title's not very good. I'm just not going to. Okay, I'm reading a great book right now, and the reason why I grabbed it, the title, awesome title. So I read it. That's how it is. So Joe Flacco, the season savior, Indianapolis Colts edition starts on Sunday Night Football. Can't wait. That is our title for this week's Colts game. The Colts decided earlier in the week to bench who was seen as the future of their franchise, Anthony Richardson, for 39-year-old Joe Flacco. The 17-year veteran quarterback was put in a similar situation last year when the Browns called on him for 5 games to lead them to the playoffs. Even though he didn't play very well in those 5 games, completing only 60% of his passes, throwing 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, he led the Browns to a 4-1 record as the starter. We'll ignore the catastrophic playoff performance to keep the vibes up for the new Indianapolis Colts starting quarterback. The Colts have gotten a taste of that Joe Flacco experience so far this year. He came in and helped the Colts hold on to a lead against the Steelers and secure the win. He led them to a win over the Titans and got hot late against the Jacksonville Jaguars and put up pretty nice numbers. The Colts made this move because they apparently want to win right now. It seems, however, like this was more of a Jim Irsay move. The Colts are going to an adult in the room who's currently the better quarterback. Hopefully, that translates to more wins. And the Colts need to start stacking wins. They're currently sitting at 4-4, and they're entering a tougher part of their schedule. They've got the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, and there's a belief that the experienced Joe Flacco will do a good job of identifying the blitzes from this blitz-heavy Vikings defense. But does he have the mobility to properly navigate the pocket with these extra rushers? With no Bernard Raymond, how does the protection hold up for the immobile quarterback that is Joe Flacco? That is the biggest concern for this Colts game on Sunday Night Football. The Colts offensive line allowed a 64% pressure rate against the Houston Texans last week with their starting left tackle playing in the entire game. Okay, that can't continue if the Colts hope to beat the Vikings in front of the entire country on Sunday Night Football. They are going to blitz and get after Joe Flacco a lot in that game. That is, for me, the number one thing I'll be paying attention to in that game Sunday night. How does this offensive line that's banged up, right? New right guard, no left tackle. Like, there's issues there. How does this banged up offensive line with an immobile quarterback handle the pressure? Okay, we're going to see, or I think we're going to see, I don't know, who knows what Shane Steichen's going to do, but I think we're going to see more quick passes, right, to kind of counter the rush. We'll see how that goes. The other part of the game that I'm very interested to see is whether or not the Colts can run the football. Okay, their run game won't be nearly as good as it was with Anthony Richardson because the Vikings don't have to worry about Anthony Richardson pulling the football at any time to take off and run, right? Like, this was part of the value of having Anthony Richardson play quarterback, okay? Whether you like him or not, I think you and I can both agree that the run game with Anthony Richardson is better than it is with Joe Flacco, right? Like, the Colts are trading the success that they've had in the run game, you know, for hopefully more success in the passing game. The Colts' lowest yards per carry in a game this year that Anthony Richardson played the whole time was 4.2. Okay, the worst yards per rush the Colts had this year with Anthony Richardson playing the whole game was 4.2 yards per carry, which is like, that's a good, solid game. Okay, the 2 games that Joe Flacco started and finished, the Colts averaged 5 yards per carry against Jacksonville and then 2.9 yards per carry against the Titans. Between those 2 games, though, the Colts only averaged 3.7 yards per carry. By going to Flacco, the Colts are sacrificing having a better run game. That is the reality of it. And hopefully Joe Flacco can make up for it with the passing game. And I get it. Joe Flacco's better than Anthony Richardson right now. I'm not saying that isn't the case. What I am saying is that the ability to run the football is incredibly important. And when your starting right guard's out for the rest of the year and your starting left tackle isn't going to play, it's going to be harder to run the football. Okay. And I know that we think that, or some people think, I don't, that Jonathan Taylor's just going to solve all these running issues. He's not going to, because the offensive line's banged up. It's slowly gotten worse throughout the course of the year. And Anthony Richardson played a big role in the Colts run game when he was the quarterback. And when you can't run the football, it's hard to score points. Okay, the basis of any good offense in the NFL is the ability to run the football. Like, take the best offenses in the NFL. Okay, the Bills, the Lions, the 49ers, the Chiefs. Guess what all four of those teams do well? Run the football. Okay, the Lions especially, like with Ben Johnson being the offensive coordinator, we get caught up in the pass plays and Amon-Ra St. Brown and the fact that their offensive tackles will score touchdowns sometimes. And, Jared Goff just doesn't throw any incomplete passes anymore. Like, we get very caught up in that. But the reason why the Lions offense is so good is because they can run the crap out of the football. The Chiefs, they run the ball really well. It's a little different, right? They run sweeps and some different things to get guys like Xavier Worthy out there on the edge. But like, that's a team that can really run the football when they need to. The 49ers, like, they are all about running the football out there. And then the Bills, obviously, with James Cook, like, they've leaned on that more and more, these past couple of years. And so how do the Colts move the football if they can't have success running it? Okay, like, Jonathan Taylor's great, awesome. Can't wait to watch him play on Sunday because he's the best running back in the NFL right now. But how much does his production decrease without Anthony Richardson in the backfield, also being a threat to keep the football? Whatever you think of Richardson, whether you think he's good right now, going to be great later, maybe you think he's bad right now, could be great later, maybe you think he's bad and he's always going to be bad. Either way, whatever you think of Anthony Richardson, his absence is going to be noticeable on downs where the Colts run the football. Okay, now the switch could 1,000% be worth it. Joe Flacco comes out and he continues to throw the football well like he has throughout this season. But given Joe Flacco's history, that's just not a guarantee, right? Threw an interception in every game that he played in last year, threw multiple in several games. We'll see how he looks on Sunday night against a good Vikings defense, a team that's lost 2 in a row. They don't want to drop 3 in a row because that, NFC North division is really good. So we'll see what they do there. Indiana, they're playing on Saturday. I'm interested to see how they handle the road. Okay, like, when you look at Indiana's schedule so far this year, 6 of their 8 games have been at home. Their 2 road games, one was at UCLA, which dealing with the travel and those things is difficult, but UCLA doesn't have a real home field advantage because people in LA don't care about your team unless you're good, and UCLA is bad. Okay, so they didn't have to deal with like a tough road environment. Their other game was on the road at Northwestern. Northwestern's playing at their practice field right now because for whatever reason, they're like, what we should do? We should renovate our stadium in the middle of the season. That makes sense. And so, like, that wasn't a super loud environment. This week they go to East Lansing. This is their first real Big Ten road game. And while Michigan State's not the big house, right? Like, this isn't going to Columbus, right? This isn't going to Happy Valley where you're playing in front of 100,000 people. But, like, it's a tougher environment than UCLA or Northwestern's practice field. Okay, like, this is the first real Big Ten road game that this team's going to play. And look, if Curtis Rourke plays, there's no concern whatsoever. They'll be fine. But if it's Taven Jackson, it's going to be interesting. That's kind of the thing for me in this Indiana game is how do they deal with playing a real road game for the first time this season? I don't think it'll matter. I still like Indiana to cover the 7.5 points, right? Hopefully, like, if Curtis Rourke plays, that's an easy bet. It's an easy bet to make. If it's Taven Jackson, it gets a little dicier because he wasn't great last Saturday against Washington. I didn't think he was really bad either, though. I thought he was pretty average, but Indiana didn't need him to be great. They ran the ball for 188 yards. Their defense scored a touchdown. They had a big play by their special teams, so they didn't have to ask him to do a ton, right? If they do, though, that's where things get really interesting because watching that game, it's pretty clear that Taven Jackson doesn't have the trust of the coaching staff, right? It was a lot of easy throws. There was one play, it was like 3rd and 8, and they're like, yeah, we're going to throw a bubble screen because we're not going to let you throw the ball past the sticks. So the game's close, and it's Tabin Jackson. It'll get really interesting really quickly. That game's at 3:30. Once again, on the road in East Lansing. Should be a blast to watch that game. If it's Rourke playing quarterback, no concerns whatsoever. Indiana should win that game. But while he's been trending towards playing, it's not confirmed that he's going to play yet. So we will have to wait and see. Thanks for tuning in to The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Zach Gray, awesome gambling guy who's been really hot as of late. He's joining the show tomorrow at 11, so make sure you're tuned in for that if you want to make some money. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. I will talk to you then. See ya.